Morning, morning, morning. Almost 60 seconds late because my stream was not connecting for some reason. There's one of the systems was upset at me. That's the latest I've ever been. Usually early. Hope I was doing good this morning. Make sure everything is good to go. Kind of check what the markets are doing this morning. Sold off pretty good overnight, it looks like. No surprise there, I guess. Seeing as this market, I mean, surprising, but also this market can go any direction at any time. I noticed that the trade I got in yesterday worked out slightly afterwards. So that's kind of nice little, at least a little reassurance that it was still a good spot. I'm going to look at that in a second. At yesterday's trade I looked for the short right here, and I mean it shot for a while and then filled that. I mean, still like obviously like a definite uptrend, but I think that look was it still basically did that, popped up, chopped, filled that, and then went, and then it did the same thing, popped up, chopped, and then filled that. Levels this morning we're kind of in a little bit of no man's land. I'd say this level's pretty solid in terms of these two touches here. And then we're just coming down to test this area. Definitely this, I want to look at these overnight bottoms, see how we react to these. Big picture. $60-minute, I mean, still just in this, I mean, even on daily. It looks like we might be breaking this a little, this wedge, but doesn't mean we're not out of the chop. And also, honestly, you could go like this with the wedge on the daily. So we're just still in the wedge on the daily. The 60 minutes is at least in some range. This to me looks like a move down and a bear flag. We've got below this previous support and swing, bounced off it a little bit. I think this definitely, if this gets going, we come to down here, or at least, you know, break this. To me, a big picture that looks pretty logical. Just with the, you know, doing this basically. And then we'll see how we react to this low. And these major lows down. I mean, this is a big support zone. I mean, we could bounce off of it and get going lower, but that's we'll see how things are when we get there. Because right now it's just so back and forth. I don't really think there's a point in thinking about a big move too much. Just taking stabs at reversals, I think, is what makes sense. I'm just going to update this upper resistance. Pretty much include these. I like that for that zone. And then we have, you know, pretty much this bear flag Can look for a short up here. Maybe see a long down here. I mean, the overnight move, even on a 60-minute, doesn't really, because it's an overnight move, doesn't really have much of a fair value gap here. So it's not super unhealthy. Doesn't mean it won't necessarily reverse. On a 15-minute or 5-minute here, it looks like there's much more unhealthy moves. But it's definitely, there was this pretty clean downtrend for a while that has broken. Sorry, I was just looking at something. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have either news today either. I think tomorrow is the news. No news today. So that's kind of nice. Tomorrow we have FOMC meeting minutes, so that'll be pretty big. Today might chop around in anticipation for that. Just kind of have to see. In terms of how much we're down overnight, we're down a percentage overnight on the Qs. The S&P 500 isn't down at all. Wow. I haven't looked at the S&P 500 in a while. This is interesting. In terms of the NASDAQ is much lower, and the S&P 500 is just kind of like in this choppy bullish trend. Oh, that looks horrible. On a 60-minute, it's still in this wedge of some kind, but it's definitely looking like it's, breaking out a little bit. Good little move this morning. We've kind of given that back up. I don't know if I really see anything at pre-market potential. Kind of just seeing, I think seeing how it reacts in this range and going from there is going to be the play today. So let me know if you guys have any questions. You do need to subscribe to do that. Hit that like button, and good morning to everyone just joining. Doesn't seem like there's too much action pre-market this morning. Maybe if we come down here and look like we're going to bounce off the lows, but there's not really crazy movement. Might just be waiting to see how it opens. Today, SpaceX is coming to NQ. Is that actually true? I haven't looked at what it's done in the last week or two. I know it kind of had a run up and then drop, and then it just had a little bit. It's kind of just flat since it's opened. Still having some volatility. Seems like it's kind of settling down a little. We'll see how that plays out. Congrats on 500K. Thank you. Yeah, yesterday during stream hit 500K subs. That was pretty cool during stream. And the mug I got, for anyone that remembers, the mug had a misprint on it. So it wasn't that the order was just not noticed. It was actually misprinted, and so we're gonna try and send it back and actually get one that doesn't have a misspell on it. How's my trading been lately? Actually, a lot better since I changed my entry style. I mean, there's still some growing pains, I would say, but last 2 weeks have been profitable, and I think it's just gonna get, it's there's still some growing pains with trying to jump in more often than not, and just commit to the opportunities I see, because usually they're correct, and I just need to get past my fear of being wrong and know that the math is very favorable now with how I'm entering. The misspelling gives it character. I kind of think so too. So my wife's gone for a couple days, so when she gets back, we'll decide. I think knowing that it was misprint versus just ordering it and not realizing that there is actually a misprint is real does make it a little more fun. What do I mean by the major trend aligned? Basically, what do I think? If the overall trend I think is bullish, I don't want to be looking for a short. How I like to, I like to enter in on a 1 minute, but the big picture and the big picture trend is everything. The 1 minute is just for getting a good price. And the idea is that if I don't see the big picture potentially bouncing off of this zone, there is no point for me trading it, no matter what kind of pattern shows up on a 1 minute. That's to me where the edge is reading the bigger picture. Like yesterday I was looking for a short up here. The bigger picture, I liked a short up here. I shorted up here and it didn't quite work. It went up a little bit higher, but you can see that bigger picture idea still played out. It's not gonna work out every time, right? With the market can do crap like this sometimes. But that's what I want to be leaning into. Same thing with here. Yesterday I liked a long at this spot, but it happened way too fast. But again, that was because the big picture, I liked a pullback at the open to make a move higher. And then on the 1 minute, I try and jump in with a good price. That's kind of where the 1 minute is where the math and the execution takes place. And the larger, bigger picture of a 15-minute or a 5-minute is where the actual edge, I think, in the direction takes place. Isn't the daily a little bearish? I think it's actually, if you look at a daily, big picture, I think we're just in a wedge. We're just in a chop fest. You could say it's a bull flag. I mean, it could go either way. It could fall out of bed and come down and test this. I try not to have a bias to some extent. Obviously, talking about the trend, I do have a bias to some extent, but honestly, my bias right now is that it can go either direction. Because for the last, what is this? Since early June, we had this sell-off, so it's literally been a month in this. It's just back and forth, volatility up, volatility down. And so having that unbiasedness of we can't go any direction at any time, I think is very helpful. Reason I'm trading NQ versus MNQ, just to get more contracts, because I like to scale in and out, trade smaller size if I want to. I plan to increase my risk as time goes on. Right now, I'm just last couple months I've been really adjusting my trading, and so I've actually been reducing my risk because when you make changes, a lot of the time, sometimes it can, make more mistakes. Like I'm making some mistakes now because I'm kind of forward testing certain ideas, and there's no point in risking more money until that's kind of figured out. What's my opinion on trailing? I pretty much always trail. If you see me manage, I've pretty much been trying to scale in and out. That's kind of a new addition too. Um, to where, let's say if I buy down here, the market shoots up, I scale out like let's say half of my trade, and then I let it, maybe pull back a little, go sideways, and then look to see if it'll continue higher with the other half, and then slowly trail my stop as it goes up. And then obviously if it pulls back too much, I'll get out of the rest of the half. It's very fluid though. It really depends on the market, what I'm expecting. If I think that it's just going to shoot up and that's it, then I'll just get everything out. That's the hard part about, and why I've only just started adding that to my own trading to some extent, is that it just adds more complexity, more variables to think about, and not always worth it. Do I think the new pattern day trading rule will change things? I don't think so. The market's so volatile. I mean, theoretically, it will add more volume, but you also got to remember that the amount of volume that day traders add, people could trade anyway. You could find a way to day trade. And so I think a lot of that volume was already in the market, more than I think people are thinking. And big picture, like these moves are so big anyway that I think people don't add that much volume to the market. What does tentative news mean? I actually don't know in terms of release time when that happens, but usually it's later in the day. It's not right in the morning. For anyone that missed it, there's really no news today. I'm sure it just kind of comes out at a random time. It's a small news event, so it's not really going to move the market anyway. For a lot of the questions about my strategy, if you just go to my YouTube channel and scroll down on the homepage, you will find this playlist here that will kind of get you through everything. It'll, talk about how I draw my levels, how futures work, my strategy. That I highly recommend going and watching after this if you're interested. Otherwise, it's a little too much questions for me to answer during stream. Do you think if we get moving up to the upside, there's definitely this level of this low that would be important to look at. Because you can see here, it bounced here, broke through, pulled back, and bounced again. So making it turn into resistance. There's also kind of these levels. I'd maybe pull this one because this is a pretty big, this is the spike yesterday. Not a crazy gap to just shoot up, I think. I think there's definitely like spots on the way up where we could find resistance if we go up. And then I think if we go down, I mean, this is, I think this is actually a level right here too. The top of this W, usually this is a good spot. And if you pull this across, you can see we bounced here before we kind of, we consolidated, tested it, and then popped and went from there. And so I think definitely pulling that across will be good as we move lower. So that could kind of turn into maybe we go lower, break out of this level, but bounce off of this one and push up. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out, okay, where are the possible spots today that we might bounce? There's quite a lot of levels, I think. And of course, this is the more middle of this range. And so the better move would be if we spiked lower and bounced off of this. But a lot of times we can have, kind of like yesterday, a little spike lower off of a minor level that bounces and pushes us into a larger level. And so if we do that, we do a little spike lower, bounce, and push up into maybe a larger level. That can be interesting for a trade to the upside. And then you look for something at the larger level, or we pop up and then sell off into the major level like this. SpaceX is due on the NASDAQ today. Does it join right at the open? I have no idea how that works. There is a huge wedge on the daily chart. We've kind of been in it for weeks now. You have a 10K live account. How many micros should you trade? I always say, no matter how much money you have, start as small as you can. You can always size up, but once you blow your account, you cannot size down. There's always like a little sweet spot for sure, depending on where you are mentally with money. You need a certain amount of risk to make it feel worth your time and for you to actually try. If you're risking $1, like for me, if I was risking $1 per trade, it is not worth my time. And I would not be treating it with the respect that it deserves, right? Because it's like, well, I'm going to make $2, right? I don't care. So I would need to size up to like, let's say $50. And maybe if making, $100 or $200 off of that trade, that seems substantial. That's a good sweet spot. But you do not want to be going and risking, even if you have a $10,000 account and, follow some percentage rule, you do not want to be risking like $500 a trade when, you might not even be profitable at real money. Switching from a demo account to real money adds like the emotions, because real money's on the line now. And so I always suggest start smaller and size up. You can size up after a week or two if you think it's just too little. But it's very hard to size down, because if you go on a losing streak, you might start revenge trading, and then there goes your account. Trading chart looks different than trading view. It could be you have delayed data. I don't know. I'm trading the micro NASDAQ futures. And they don't really have leverage, like a certain amount. They inherently have leverage with how futures are. SPY is flagging while the wedge is getting tighter. Yeah, we'll break at some point. But if we're just super, I mean, honestly, we'll probably break. If we don't break today, like the NASDAQ doesn't look like it will. I mean, we'd have to make a big move. I think even if we pop down here, we could recover and still stay in the wedge on a daily. I think it's more likely tomorrow at FOMC is when we get a break or a big move in some direction. I mean, even if that happens and we're down here, we might pop up here and not break on the upside, even though if things spike up after FOMC. And then maybe we go from there. But there's a big amount of space to the top side of the wedge right now. So kind of just waiting it out. Market's about to open. Anyone just coming in? I mean, these are the main levels I'm looking at. There's a lot of levels, I think, right now. The market isn't just a very choppy. There's still volatility. I think there's still trades to be had, but definitely volatility is getting pretty tight right now. Yesterday, the volatility wasn't great. We still had decent movement, but it was very tricky. So that could continue today with FOMC tomorrow. Other than that, I mean, 5 minute kind of, we sold off overnight. We had a big sell off overnight. And then we're kind of just in this pre-market flag. So I'm seeing, okay, do we bounce off of this? Or do we bounce and pop up here and go up here and bounce somewhere up here? Or, maybe we pop down here and bounce here. Or we, just sell off and bounce down here. So kind of just, there's not enough pre-market movement, I think, to really go for something. There wasn't enough pre-market move to go for something pre-market. Thinking about these opening spikes at levels I like recently. I almost took one yesterday. This wasn't really enough of a spike lower. I mean, this is a big candle actually already. A little over 100 points. Our opening candles have been 100 points basically recently. So that's pretty standard. On a 5 minute, there was this kind of fair value gap here. Unhealthy move to the downside off of this that just filled. So that move is done. I think if we made a little bit more of a spike lower, I think I would have looked to jump in on that move, but it just did that in the opening spike. So to me, that moves over. I think it'll be just waiting to see what kind of the first 10 or 15 minutes brings in terms of volatility if we move somewhere. Otherwise, I don't know if entering in this tight range is worth it. Just kind of see what this opening volatility does. I do have a video that talks about NinjaTrader. If you go to my homepage and scroll down there's a tutorial there. Maybe there's a little downtrend like this. I was kind of respecting that pre-market. I wonder if we're in a little channel like this. Do I consider the first candle as an unhealthy move? No. Especially if if it just spikes and recovers like this, no. Even if it popped up here, if it popped up here and started to do this a little and then sold off, that would be an unhealthy move. I think it's just more of like if it holds and continues a little. But right now it's already given that back up. You know, clearly it was just like a fake higher. It recovered this move, tested this upper area. My intuition about the market is kind of that there's just not great opportunities right now. I mean, we'll see how the day up develops, but just based on how yesterday was, and where we are with the FOMC tomorrow, I'm skeptical about today. I don't want to take a long here now. This is just normal candlesticks, I think, at this point. Seeing it push lower more is more ideal. For my microphone, I have a standalone mic. The earbuds are just for music. I have just calming, boring music that just has, you know, like alpha, beta, gamma waves that just like helps you focus, you know. That I think helps definitely. I like having something. Usually before streaming, I would actually listen to normal music like that has, you know, lyrics and everything. But now with streaming and talking the whole time and needing my thoughts kind of more coherent, I've switched. It's a nice little spike down. I definitely big picture. I could see like this. I could see a little spike like this, a little fake lower at the open and pop. You know, break below this, and then really just test this area. Like this is the initial test of this. If we're testing this low, we could do it anywhere in this square, I think. Just trying to think about the big picture. I mean, big picture, we're just at these lows. You know, the main support and the main extremes are down here. There's definitely like this stuff here. I think the question is seeing, are we going to just fail this move? I don't think I want to jump in on a pullback right here. I don't see kind of I think that's just randomly buying this bottom. I don't really see my candlestick pattern of a big candlestick to the low side where it gets really overextended and snaps. To me, this just slowed down a little. And if it just slows down, it could come right here, test this low, and continue lower. It's not really a bottom I like. I like the idea of the bottom, but it's not showing me enough of a signal yet to say, okay, it is bottoming. Maybe if it makes a double bottom, or if it makes one more stab lower that clearly gets rejected. But I don't want to just take a long just yet. I think the bottom I don't think is in yet in terms of a clear, clean spot to put my stop. Major trend though, I think we can go either direction right now. So I want to be open-minded to a little along here, and then we are at a reversal zone. We're starting to get an unhealthy move on a 5-minute. This is definitely a nice spike lower. So I think if this candlestick now fails, this is good. Like, this is a nice overextended candle. Now it could keep going because we did just, do a little pullback and bounce. But if this candlestick fully gets rejected, I would jump in on a pullback and catch this to the upside. And so I'd probably try and enter in somewhere right here, which of course the R to the other side would be great. I need to see this next candle though, pretty much give this whole thing back up. To me, that is this candlestick failing to break lower and it be turning into a fake out. There's not really a 1-minute trend to break. I would say that the 1-minute trend is broken, especially with this candlestick. I would say this candlestick is now a reversal pattern. And I'll put in contracts here on a pullback. If we get filled, I'm gonna move this up a little. My new style doesn't chase this move though. I need to enter in on this pullback. Why is it 4? Oh, okay, I accidentally just did 20 contracts. We're full size on this. I think that's okay. I like that. I'm gonna pull up half of these contracts at not all of them. Geez, I'm struggling this morning. If it pops, I'm in it, but if it doesn't, I'm gonna take half of these off at 2x. I'm just waiting for this to pop here. I accidentally went full size instead of half size. Might turn out to be a mistake in my favor. Need to figure out my hotkeys after this a little bit. But I move those to break even right away. Like if it pops, I'll take the free win and free money. And if it doesn't, I'll just get out here at, when I think it's given up the kind of easy money. And then I'll scale the rest normally. And it might just pull back like this, but I was intense for a second. Sometimes mistakes happen in your favor. It hasn't profited yet, so I'm not going to count my chickens, but at least it didn't just rip against me. And I'm keeping the normal one at where I normally would, because I think this could totally pull back here and pop. But I didn't want to, there was no reason to jump out of, I think, the first half up here, because I think that would have just been too scared of a kind of move. I'm just going to move this up here. This is for the other contracts now. So, bummer if it just spikes, hits. That's why this main stop isn't moved. because this pullback right here, totally expected. But it was not worth holding that extra size that I wanted on. That would have just been greedy and stupid, if you ask me. If this pops here, I'll go break even. Right now, it's kind of just chopping around. I want to give it time. I think if this, I don't want to get chopped out by this move. I think if this is going to bottom, this is it. Like this is, if we're going to go like here, at least up to here, the bottom's in. That's how I'm working with this move. I'm going to go break even now on this. Or not break even, but below this little swing. Just stay methodical with this. I think with how today is and the market, I'm probably just going to scale everything out if we spike up here. Because this is clearly just not great. I don't think I want to give it more wiggle room for a stop either. I mean, this is a healthy pullback. This is kind of a fake higher. It'd be a bummer if it pops and pulls back and does this. But I think today is just choppy enough that I'm okay. And it's hard. It's hard knowing when to give it more room or less room. Because this stop, I think, this signal is great. And it could just kind of chop here for a little while and continue higher. Part of me wants to pull my stop back again because this was just a little bit of a fake higher and it could just continue to chop here for a minute before going. I'm just gonna let it do its thing. I think I'll close. I'm gonna split this order up, actually. I think I'll take half off at 2x. It's just how this is acting. I think if we get a little spike up here, just take some off, especially with the weird emotional effect that adding on more had here and having that get knocked out and not taking any off here. I think it was fine what I did, but it's still kind of annoying. And this isn't acting great, but I think I would rather take 2 off and then see what we do. Maybe we pop up to here and I can get 4x on the rest. But it's definitely taking its time and I can still see it spike lower. Part of me really wants to keep my stop at the lows. This chop just feels like it's going to spike more. Because big picture, it's in a spot I do like. And we might just make one more little stab lower. I think I'm going to move it down. Might be stupid, but just with how it's acting, I could just see it pop here and pop back up. It might pop and make me lose, but I think big enough picture and how it's acting, I would rather, we're at a good spot to bottom. I would rather let the trade play out and see, okay, does it actually bottom? Let the math do its thing, because I do like this was a great signal. And it just needs time to kind of consolidate. And if it turns into a loss and I could have saved money and, theoretically closed out those extra, that won't feel good. But I want to stick with you know, the idea of I'm trying to jump in on this signal and let it play out. And I don't want to try and overmanage. And I think, you know, it technically did make a 50% pullback here of this. Like in a bearish sense, we could be doing this. And so that might make the trade lose. But I think in a bullish sense, I think we're at a good spot. I like this bottom. And I think the math to pop up here, you know, I want to stay with the signal. And I don't want to get flushed out by whatever is going on. And I think if this spikes up one more time up to here, I could move my stop here because I think a pullback all the way there isn't great. This is definitely a nice little spike here of this fake lower getting rejected. Pops up a little bit more, I'll definitely move my stop up here to reduce some risk. Because if it pops up here and that gets rejected, I think we definitely retest the lows here. It's a very tricky balance of getting married to the trade, but also not over analyzing, which I might be doing. Looking at a 5-minute here. $9.50 here. I just really like to let it's a balance between sticking with the main stop and not moving it too quickly. Sometimes it works out, and I mean, this market is very choppy, which makes it difficult. And so like usually in a choppy market, having a wider stop is better because you're not going to get knocked out by noise. Like this looked pretty good to the upside. Maybe I should have moved, you know, over managing could have been moving my stop here. Same thing with having my stop up here earlier. It's very tricky in these spots, but I would prefer to try and, if I feel like I'm over managing it, I would prefer to just stick with the main signal. And if it knocks me out, it knocks me out, and reassess later to, you know, look back in hindsight without the emotions of being in the trade and say, okay, what did I do right? And what could I maybe do better in the future? And learn from there, because trying to make those decisions in real time often can be very tricky. And, you know, in hindsight, obviously it looks like I should have just got out at break even and I should have taken everything off here, but that's, you know, that's not really what I'm trying to do with my strategy. I'm trying to capture these bottoms. And this thing looked, I really like this spike lower. Looked really good to pop up here and give that back up. And maybe because it was a quick move after it failed here to continue higher, you know, that can be a signal maybe in the future that I start to realize, okay, it's failed to go twice when I'm looking for a fast move. I should just bail. So we'll see. I'll journal about it and see what I think going forwards on that. Might just be in a little sloppy downtrend here. Big picture definitely could be. I saw this both directions. This big picture of, okay, we have a bear flag here. We could just be popping. My other thought was we could just do this, and so that's what I was looking for there. I think it made sense. It was very close to working out. You know, my goal this week is to be jumping in all these spots I'm seeing, because my hesitation in the past has theoretically lost me money. I'm not gaining spots I think I should be. And that might open up spots. You know, the hard part about when you do something like that, from doing it in the past myself, is you might have a week like this where they don't work, and now you're starting to take them all, and so now you go on a loss streak, and you feel like I'm an idiot. You know, I'm over trading, and then you stop versus continuing to do it, and then the trades do start to work out, and the math brings you back. I think there was nothing wrong with this entry, though. I really liked it. I think this was a great flush lower with this big candlestick immediately getting reversed, getting filled on a good pullback here. And then it popping up here and failing. I think it was fine to actually hold through that pullback. Maybe I should have got out as this failed, because this candlestick failing definitely is more of like okay, this could have been the fake lower that now rips, and I allowed myself to stay in on that. But if this fails and comes back, it's definitely hitting the low. So maybe I could have scaled out a little bit there to save a little bit of money. And that's maybe a read I can do in the future. It was a nice setup. Love that trade. Yeah, it's just hard. You know that. I mean, that's trading, right? Sometimes it's like they don't work all the time, and it's frustrating when they don't. But you know, you don't want it to let you not take the future ones. That's the hard part, and that's the hardest part for me. Is, you know, a couple losses add up, and you're like, oh well, now I'm doubtful of these playing out, right? But it's like theoretically with the math being going for 3 or 4x, they're not supposed to work most of the time. But that doesn't mean you're not making money. I think now that we're pushing, it's better on a 15-minute, really. 60-minute too. I mean, rip down to here. I mean, testing these lows, I think, is kind of the next zone I would like to see. Approaching the bottom of the wedge. Yeah, I mean, the bottom, even on a bigger picture, the bottom of this wedge you could still wick out all the way down to this level. And so I definitely like, also with the fact that this did do a bottom that I think should have worked if we were in a more bottoming market. I definitely want to see this kind of rip and overextend a large amount now. Make a solid unhealthy move to the downside here. And then, you know, align up with 10 o'clock reversal timing. I'm just going to remove, I guess I'm going to reduce these levels up here. And my past rules have been, were to not take a spot like that, because in the sense of, well, it's kind of middle of the range, right? There's these levels I was looking to bounce off of were more minor levels, reducing their likelihood. And the bigger level is down here. The main support level is down here, where we're more likely to have a bounce. And so past me would just sit this out and just wait for these. And that's totally a fine way to trade. But what I want to do now is I do want to start taking stabs in these spots, because I think they work out math-wise if I'm going for, 3 or 4 risk times my risk. If this works out 25% of the time, I'm making money on it. And I can take smaller size on these spots where it's like, let's say I risk $700, $800, and on the bigger levels, I risk my full size. Because those are, again, the more likely spots to play out. And more likely spots where you're going to get a larger move to the upside or downside if you're shorting. And then another thing down the road, what I want to add on is when I get to those big levels, thinking about, okay, once I look for a bottom here and, capture my small little move on a 1 minute, can I leave, a 25% of the trade on or whatever to capture a swing trade to the upside? Because, big picture, I mean, this is a great spot to look for a major bottom on a 60-minute time frame or something. And if we kind of bottom here, I'm just not going to do anything. I don't like it. I want to wait for down here. I've only I've already taken one trade today that hasn't worked out, and so I want to be more patient with the next setup if I even take one. Being aware that, hey, maybe the market's not working for my strategy today. Maybe I'm not seeing things properly. I like to be more on the cautious side when looking for stuff like that. Control hack. Thanks for the 5 gifted. 5 people just got a free sub. Appreciate that. That is an awesome thing to do. And also it helps to give some time to reset from, because this was kind of mentally and emotionally draining with accidentally adding on double, and then kind of going back and forth of oh, do I move my stop or not? I think moving my stop down was good. I think I should have moved it back up after this move. I think that's how I see it. Once it made this attempt to continue higher and that failed, I should have pulled my stop up here. But again, that's such a minor thing of, okay, I saved 30% risk. If I was risking 900 there roughly, I maybe saved $300. Definitely adds up over time, but not a make or break thing. I think having my stop here and moving it down here, I think definitely this had a good chance. I mean, clearly it did almost do this. I think that was fine. Because when it's in that choppiness, I moved my stop up thinking that this was going to rip below here, because that's what I want to be doing. Is okay, if it's starting to move now, I move my stop up. But if it's just sitting here, I don't want to get knocked out by a stab lower where it's just in a choppy range. Lost a trade. Why not I stopping? I want to try and because I'm trying to take more trades, I want to also have the opportunity to open myself up to taking like 2 trades a day. You know, like if I take a trade right at the open, I don't think there's a point of just being done for the day, because it could be a good trade at the open, and then 30 minutes later, another good trade shows up. You know, I think it's better to, I think taking 1 trade a day, I think is great. Nothing wrong with that. But I think to me, I can handle taking 2 trades a day if the opportunity is there. I don't want to trade longer though. I'm not going to do that. I'll still stop at my normal time. But I think there's nothing wrong with taking 1 trade a day. I did that for a long time. And I still will probably be, you know, sticking to 1 trade a lot of the time. You know, it'll be just but I want to give myself the opportunity to take more trades if possible. But I think that's because I have the ability to understand, okay, am I just revenge trading or not mentally capable of making a good decision anymore in the day? And I can pull the plug for the day. But in the beginning for me, I put a rule of 1 trade a day because it helps me have a solid rule to not continue to revenge trade or chase or, you know, do something stupid. I don't necessarily think I'm going to downsize contracts. I'm still going to stay at half size. Just kind of sitting here in this awkward middle of the range area. It could bounce here because it could just bounce anywhere at this like low, but I'm not going to take anything here. I want to see it test this. Don't do 20 again. Yeah, I won't do that. That could have played out really well in my favor. For a second there, it looked like I was about to just full size rip to the upside and get like a 4K trade. That would have been a pretty nice thing to happen, but you know, not a big deal that it didn't. I do read Twitch chat for people asking. But there's just a lot of messages on YouTube, so I don't read every message. Think I should start taking continuation trades? I've tried it. Theoretically, it's a great idea. You know, the idea of like, hey, if this level doesn't hold, why not, you know, take the break out of that level or something. But I think it just, again, like my goal is to always try and make things as simple as possible. And, you know, already I'm not overcomplicating, but just adding more complexity to my trading. And I think there's plenty, like we have had so many good opportunities. I think there's plenty of opportunities to make money with just what I'm doing, you know, and again, the money comes from sizing up, not taking more trades. Sad to see me lose a bunch of trades recently. Well, it's only been 2 this week, and then the last 2 weeks before that, I guess I lost one on Thursday last week. Last week I went 1-1, but it, you know, because of risk, it was still profitable. So the last 2 weeks have been profitable, and this week isn't over. So Even that's the thing. Even though I'm losing trades, I'm still theoretically, on the upswing. How much did I lose on that trade I took? So I took a trade this morning for people coming in late. I lost 900, 1,000 almost. I wonder if it slipped at all on me, because it did not seem like. I guess I actually didn't. My trying to look here. No, it doesn't look like it. It may have slipped a tiny bit, but I mean, roughly about the size I was looking for anyway. So I entered in here for people that missed the trade. I tried to jump in long here. I really like this setup. It bottomed, made a crazy flush candle that got rejected. And then I looked to get filled on a little pullback, and it looked like it was just about to rip this back up. And then there's some debacle where I accidentally double sized. So I took half off it, got out of those extra contracts at break even, and then I just left this at the lows because it seemed like it was being choppy. I could have maybe moved my stop up here and saved a couple $100. But I would rather kind of let the chop play out because generally I think this stop is really, really strong with how it's set up, with how this candlestick faked lower. If this was going to bottom, even if it came all the way down here, I don't think it's going to break that. That's kind of my idea with how I approach that. And so I'm okay letting it pull back here and then shoot higher. And the risk reward here was great. I mean, it was, entered in here up to here. I'm getting 3 if we just fill this. And then if we continue higher, it opens the door up to 4, I think. So, but looks like we're just continuing lower. And we'll just kind of see if this does something down here. This is a pretty healthy downtrend though. So I think it's going to be hard to look for a reversal. Maybe if we start to accelerate here, we could be in kind of like a little down channel. Let me just remove these dots. They're kind of annoying. There's not really a bottom to the downside, but if this starts to just accelerate, it could start a bottom. That's what I would kind of look for. Did I sync my time? I haven't noticed that I haven't noticed yet if it's off, but I did have to do it yesterday. I do stream on Twitch. Some people find it actually better for the delay. Theoretically on YouTube, to me it says there is a less than a 3-second delay, but that's on my end, and sometimes it comes out differently for people. I was up almost 1,700 on that trade. Right, but it's not about the money. Because again, everyone is in a different spot, right? $1,700, but I was theoretically, when I was up 1,700, I was risking basically 2,000. And so that's not even 1-to-1. And so if I just, if you theoretically size up to a crazy amount and just, you enter in here and you just get out here because you're up 2,000 and you're scared, but your loss is down here, the market math-wise is just going to stop you out sometimes for full loss and just destroy you over time, right? That's why I try and talk about in terms of R, in your risk-reward ratio. I still have the money down here because I need to know exactly how much I'm risking. but you want to be thinking about it in risk to reward ratio, because if you're risking $50, you want to be going for 150 or 200. But to me, being up that much is nothing with my size, and so it's over time, the money's just going to get bigger, but you need to be treating it like the risk reward ratio, because otherwise it's just not, it doesn't work out. For journaling, I think it's extremely important to, what a lot of people miss is the emotional side. You want to start taking track of the emotions that you felt when you entered in or when you managed it, and basically start to figure out what is negatively affecting your trading. Because that's what generally stops people from being profitable. Is, like, for me, my biggest thing is the fear of being wrong and a specific trade not working out. And so that, to me, most of the time makes me hesitate and not jump in when my strategy says. And in turn, that turns into missing out on a lot of opportunities I should be in. And so in that sense, you should actually, I track those trades too. So you want to track trades that your strategy said you should have got in and you didn't necessarily do it. Because that is also an important piece of the puzzle. Kind of getting cruising here. We're at the lows. 10:30 is kind of the time I would look for this to reverse. If it does. But it kind of feels like we're just chugging lower right now. Do I ever do an opening range breakout? I do not. Is this the unhealthy move? It could be. I think it's going to kind of see how this develops. I think if this turns a fair value gap on, I think that's good. But part of me is a little skeptical. But I think it's worth still taking. Again, math-wise, and if the opportunity shows up, I know I will be a little hesitant because I've already taken one loss today. And this, I think at the moment, this does look pretty solid of a downtrend. Even if it's kind of getting overextended here, it might just continue to do this. So I want to see it's not setting up, I think, yet. I think this is just still cruising down. It could just consolidate here and continue. And I might just, not take it and wait till tomorrow, Just kind of depends on how it sets up. My gut thought is that it's just going to continue lower. Big spike lower. I mean, we have done, kind of this. The daily chart's kind of at support of this wedge. It's definitely a spot where I could see us bottoming. But the question is, do we bottom right away? I think that's the hard part is, entering on a 1 minute, I'm looking for this to reverse like almost immediately. And it might not do that. It might just kind of chop for a while. We had kind of this run down, do a little bit of this, and then continue. So we could do that. Again, thinking that we're kind of in a healthy downtrend. And as well, I want to see kind of a bottom like this again. That's kind of my main entry signal of when a bottom happens. If it just kind of does a slow like this, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these like flushes. I don't like the round bottoms as much. I feel like there's not as much of an edge and opportunity there. I mean, this week, frankly, has just been crap so far. It's just been very choppy, but still had movement. So it's just been hard to trade. Definitely got a little bit of a fair value gap there on a 5 minute. Trying to be patient and watch this and wait. Part of me wants to just be done. Not the greatest feeling to be had while trading, but even on a 5 minute, I think this looks, you can kind of see healthiness. It might set up a reversal on a 5 minute. I think that would be the better play to look for this reverse, is if a 5 minute bottom kind of sets up versus looking for a little 1 minute trigger. I think we're flagging out here, which could be just this to continue lower. I think if that flag out starts to fail and do a lower high, that could trigger a bottom. Again, got to remember that we're at a bigger picture level where it's more likely than these, more minor ones I was looking at earlier. But it kind of this looks like it's just gonna keep going. Buyers defending this level doesn't look like they're doing a very good job. I mean, big picture, this is a big level. That's the hard part about taking along here too. Is it could bottom anywhere in here. I mean, we've broken this one, and kind of this is where like the extreme lows is. But it's also, you know, we tested it a ton over here, tested it again, and bounced in a good way. This is testing it for the however manyth time. We could break it, you know. The more times you test it, the more likely I think it is to fail. And I think this was a really good, I think in a big picture idea, this was a really good flush lower that I thought was going to actually put a bottom in the market for a minute, you know, and push us at least up to here. And so I think this failing has probably trapped a lot of swing traders to the upside. And so we're probably stop hunting down here. Or this sell-off has just been triggered by all these people getting out of their trades. And so I think we're in a pretty healthy downtrend right here. I have a rule too of not reversing strong, healthy moves. I mean, this is, I think, is a strong, healthy move to the downside. I think it's going to be very hard to reverse. We're down over 2% on the day on the Qs. Now, we could, you know, the reason why I don't like to reverse big trends like this is because it's very hard to actually spot the bottom and trade it. You know, you could think it was bottoming here. You could think it was bottoming here. I thought it was bottoming here. And so it could look like it's bottoming and then just keep going lower. Because all the bottoms are actually just healthy pullbacks. And so the trend is just strong in that direction. And then when it does bounce, a lot of the time it's not going to just recover the whole thing. We actually had a trade, I think, a couple of trades that have done that recently, because this market's been insane. But a lot of the times it'll just recover some and go sideways, or it'll recover, flag out, and then continue lower. It's very rare that it recovers and reverses and makes a trend worth profiting from or risking. And so it's hard at just being right at this level, but I'm starting to think it's just not gonna produce. Kind of waiting to see how this thing sets up over the next 10 minutes. And if it doesn't, I'll just let it be. Do I trade live or funded? I trade my own money. Trying to think about just gonna try and pull up. There's this level. We had this big move the other day. This is a previous trade from I think last week where we did have a big move down. And then I looked for I immediately reversed it. I'm just trying to see what this looked like. And because this thing just popped. This was a V bottom. But comparing that, this is a 1 minute of the NASDAQ. This move is clearly unhealthy. It's very fast. And it just bottomed. Versus the move we have right now. This is very methodical. Very healthy. We're starting to maybe get a little overextended here where we could snap back up. I could see us doing that. Popping up to here. But comparing it to this one is way faster to the downside. That I think looking for a pop like this does make sense. So that's why I'm more hesitant here. And I think this is not as good of a spot to look for a trade. Maybe we set up a little head and shoulders here. If this makes a new low here, I'm just going to call it. Frankly, I don't think I should be looking for a long here anyway. If it happens, it's not going to be easy. And I think the fact that I just said that out loud, I'm just going to call it. I think that's a good observation and just be done. I don't think that a long trade here is going to be easy or really worth the risk. I think up here, I took a long up here. I think that was a great opportunity for just an opening little rip. But I think down here is just not my forte. You know, it could still bottom here on a 5 minute. I think we're still at a good spot. But for me, it's later in the day. It's kind of pushing outside of my zone, outside of my time zone of trading. And we're just in this healthy downtrend. I just don't think it's going to... Again, I think if it bottoms, I think it pops up to here pretty easily. And it might do that right as I close stream because it likes to do that sometimes. But he's calling it means we're about to reverse. Yeah. But I would rather just be done and see what tomorrow brings. I don't like the feeling of just staying too long. It makes me feel like I'm going to FOMO into something. So, and frankly, I have some stuff to go to. So I don't want to force something when I feel like I have a meeting and I have to jump into. So I'm going to stay out because I think even if it does bounce, it's not going to be great. This is a really healthy downtrend. Appreciate everyone being here as always. I will be on tomorrow, same time. And have a good rest of your day. I need to go and reset from this morning. But, you know, again, I think that trade I took this morning was great entry. I liked it. You know, the management was maybe a little funky, but overall, I think the entry was good, and 90% of trading is the entry. So again, see you guys tomorrow. If you have any questions about my strategy, go check out my YouTube channel. Got a lot of good tutorials there. So see you guys tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day.